Hello and welcome to this tutorial to help you learn more about building Workbooks reports. In this session, we're looking at how you can introduce target information into your reports and charts to give you good visibility of progress against target. Targets can be shown in reports with the actual figure reached alongside the target and the percentage of target achieved, or you can show various combinations of those figures. To make progress against target even easier to see, it's common to use conditional formatting along with the target information. There's a separate tutorial looking at conditional formatting, but we'll look at it in conjunction with targets in this session. If you've added targets to your report, you can then use them in charts, and if you've used conditional formatting in your report, that too will appear in your chart. There are two ways to add targets into your report. One is by referencing a value in another column in your report. Most commonly, this means adding a calculated column containing a formula that specifies the targets for each grouping in your report. But you can reference data held within your system if you want to. The other approach is by using a built-in option called defining target values per group. We're going to look at the second approach first because I think that's slightly easier. In previous tutorials, we've looked at how to build an open pipeline report. In the example on the screen at the moment, it says that your sales manager wants you to introduce targets to that report, and they've provided you with the information on the target for each salesperson that you can see in the table there. You've also been asked to show the output in different colours depending on how well the salespeople are doing against their target. So those who are 90% or more above their target should be shown in green. If they've only achieved 40% or less, they should be shown in red, and any percentage in between should be shown in amber. So it's a classic red, amber, green split. Let's go into Workbooks to find out how we can do that. Hopefully by now you will have watched some of our other tutorials so that you should be familiar with how to build a sales pipeline report. So I'm just going to build one very quickly using a pre-populated report. So I went to Start, New Report, based it on a pre-populated report and chose Opportunities. I called mine Pipeline, and then I added a criterion of state equals open so I could just see open deals. I added in a summary view and I called it Pipeline Targets Defined per Group. I then added a subtotal column to show the amount in home currency, and I grouped it by the assigned to field, which I renamed Sales Rep, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Now at this point I could go ahead and add the targets in now using the blue Add Targets button at the top here, but I'm not going to yet because I just want to show you the output that I've got at the moment. So I'll save and close that and load the preview. So at the moment we've got two columns, one showing the sales rep and the one on the right showing how much they've got in their pipeline at the moment. I'm going to reopen the amount column. This time there isn't a button that says Add Targets, but there is a tab for it. So I'm going to click on that. At the moment it says Target Type No Targets because we haven't specified any. But if I use the drop down here, you can see I've got the two choices that I referred to in the slides earlier. We've got the Get Target Values from another column, which we will come back to. But for now I'm going to choose this Define Target Values per Group. This opens up a field where I can control which columns will appear in my report. By default, the actual value reached, the target value and the percentage of the target value achieved will show, but you can change that using the drop-down. You can use any of these combinations. Further down the screen there's a button called Add Target. Remember, I've already grouped this column by the assigned to or the sales rep field, so when I click this button, the choices I'm given to select from here are the names of each row or group that I've created. You can simply select each one and add in the target. The comments field, you can add something in to explain why the target has been set at that figure if you like, but the only person who can see that is you. It won't actually appear in the output of the report. So when you want to add in the target for the next row, click Add Target. It will look like you can add the same value twice, but don't, because you won't actually be able to save and close this dialog box if you do. So continue through your list, adding the targets for each row. Notice that when you're entering the targets, you don't actually enter a currency symbol, if that's what the target's in, if it's a financial target, and you don't enter the thousands separator either. Workbooks will add them in for you, as it has done for me, but I didn't actually type those in. This is a bit like split columns. The original column that showed whatever figure the salespeople had achieved was there, but now we've got the three columns for what they've achieved, what their target was, and the percentage against target for these top three rows. If I scroll down, there are lots of other sales reps, lots of other rows in this report, but because I haven't put the targets in for them, it looks like they've all achieved 0%. But that's only because we simply added the targets for the first three in the list for speed in this tutorial. In reality, you would add targets for each salesperson. If you remember, we were asked to colour code the output, showing percentages achieved over 90% in green, those below 40% in red, and everything in between in orange. We could have done that while we were editing the column for the amount, but we can also go back in and add it now using the style column. If you've watched the video on conditional formatting, you'll have seen that there are two ways to apply conditional formatting. But once you've configured a column to include targets, you're actually given a third way. And it's this middle one here, conditional styling on targets. If you select that, make this a bit bigger, make it easier for you to see. When you select that, this screen now looks very much like it did if you were putting conditional styling on values. You've now got a low threshold and a high threshold here, but you can see there are percentage symbols after them. So if I change the low threshold to 40 and the high one to 90, as I click away, you can see that the three columns beneath have altered to reflect the low and high threshold that I've entered higher up the screen. By default, the things in the smallest bucket, if you like, are white text on a red background. The things over on the right, the things, in my case, above 90%, will be shown with a green background and white writing on there, and everything in between will have black text on a gold or sort of amber background. But you can use these drop-downs if you wanted to change these colours. You can change the colour of the text and or the colour of the background to suit your requirements. I'm going to leave mine as it is. I'm going to click Save and Close. And straight away you can see that we've got for Alex, Alison and Andy, we've got green and then amber and then red, because Alex had hit 91% of target, Alison is sitting at 68 and poor old Andy is down at 35. Everything else is showing in red because, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't entered a target, so it looks as if these reps have actually achieved 0% of target. I said previously that there were two ways to add targets to your report, and we've just looked at the second way, defining the targets per group. So let's look at the first way, which is where you get the target values from another column. Imagine you've been asked to build the same report as before, but this time the sales manager has given you specific targets for Alex, Alison and Andy, and has said that everyone else has a target of 750,000. I know this is a bit unrealistic, but I'm doing it to illustrate a point which hopefully you'll see when we move into workbooks. As I mentioned earlier, to put these targets into your report, you either need to point at a column in your system, or in our instance, we're going to build a formula for this. Here's the formula we're going to use, and it's called a case statement. There is a separate tutorial on commonly used formulae, but I'll talk you through what this one's doing. The first row is an instruction to look at the value in the assigned to name field. The second row says, when the value in that field is Alex McDonald, then return 1.1 million. The third row says, when the value in that field is Alison Jones, then return 1.2 million. And the third row says, when the value in the field is Andy Bean, then return 900,000. So the same figures as we've already set up when we were in workbooks before. The fourth row, though, says that if any value other than the ones specified above is found, return 75,000. And finally, in the formula, we use end as an instruction to tell the formula to stop looking for any other values. I'll go back into workbooks to show you this in action. Here's the report we created a few minutes ago that defined target values per group. To show you the difference, I'm going to edit the report by creating a new summary, and I'm actually going to copy the summary we've already got. But this time I'm going to define the targets from another column. At the moment, this report looks exactly like the first summary because we just copied it. But I'm going to add a calculated column, and I'm going to paste in that formula that I showed you on the PowerPoint earlier. Normally, of course, I would build this within the report. I'm just pasting it in for speed in this tutorial, but all I've done is exactly what you saw on the slide before. Now I can go and reopen the amount column, which is the one that's currently split into 3 on the screen. I can go to the Targets tab and I can change the target type. Currently it's defined on target values per group, but I'm going to change that and say get the target values from another column, and the column I want to point at is that calculated one I've just built called Target. So I've got the 3 columns I had before. Target is still showing, so that looks a bit odd. I've got Target twice, but I can hide that second Target column. And now if I save and run this report, you can see we've got the specifically defined targets for Alex, Alison and Andy. And then every other row in the report, I said for anyone else, give them a target of 750,000. So that's what's happened. And now we are actually seeing, instead of seeing 0 for their achieved figure, we are seeing some figures in there. So there are some people that are on the way to getting target. Tony at the bottom's achieved his, and quite a few people who are lagging behind. Of course, if I wanted to, I could amend the thresholds and the colours used for the conditional formatting on this report. Or if I wanted to see more than 3 colours, I could change the formatting to use a calculated conditional styling. More information on how to do that is available in the tutorial on conditional formatting. Both approaches to setting targets are equally valid, and it just depends on how you want to enter things and how many people you've got with different targets. Remember, you can set targets that aren't just financial as well. It could be targets for support case resolution times, or the number of leads generated by marketing campaigns, or a whole range of other things. The approach, though, would still be the same. You would set your targets based on how your report is grouped, either by defining the target values per group, or by writing a formula to set the target values and pointing your total column to that one, or possibly by having a field on a record in Workbooks that you point to the value in that field. Let's recap then on targets. Targets can be set up on reports and can then be used on charts. If you want to know more about how to use bar graphs and to put targets into them, then watch the tutorial focused on charts. The targets themselves can be defined for the groups in your summary report, or can be based on values in another column, either a calculated column or a column referencing a field in your database that holds the information that you want to use. Either way, you can control whether you see 3 columns showing the actual and the target values, as well as the percentage achieved, or any combination of these. Finally, you can use conditional formatting to make the information clearer to understand for the audience. So, thanks for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. If you want to find out more about Workbooks reporting, please do visit our knowledge base, which you can find at workbooks.com/help/reporting.